Lose Now, Pay Later by Carol Farley. I think my little brother is crazy. At least I hope he is. Because if his loony idea is right, then all of us are being used like a flock of sheep. And that's a pretty gruesome thought. Humans just can't be that stupid. My brother has a dumb idea, that's all. It's just a dumb idea. This whole situation started about 8 months ago. That's when I first knew anything about it. I mean, my best friend, Trinja, and I were shopping when we noticed a new store where an old insurance office used to be. It was a cubbyhole, really, at the far end of the mall where hardly anybody ever goes. When we were there because we'd used that entrance as we came home from school. Swooties, Trinja said, pointing at the letters written across the display window. What do you think they are, Deb? I stared through the glass. The place had always looked dim and dingy before, full of desks, half dead plants, and bored looking people, but now it was bright and glaring as a health brigade corps office. There weren't any people inside at all, but there were 5 or 6 gold colored machines lining the walls. Signs were hung everywhere. Sweet plus goodies equals Swooties, one said. Flavors were posted by each machine: peanut butter fudge crunch, butter rum pecan, chocolate nut mint, things like that. The biggest sign of all simply said, free. Have to admit that the place gave me the creeps that first time I saw it. I don't know why. It just looked so bare and bright, so empty and lean, without any people or movement. The glare almost hurt my eyes, and I guess I was suspicious about anything that was completely free. Still, though, there was a terrific aroma drifting out of there, sort of combination of all those flavors that were listed in the sign. Let's go in, Trinja said, grabbing my arm. I could see that the smell was getting to her, too. She is always on a diet, so she thinks about food a lot. It's so empty in there, I said, drawing away. But they've just opened, that's all, she told me, yanking my arm. Besides, machines and robots run lots of the stores. Let's go inside, see what's there. Do you know that wonderful spurt of air that rushes out when you first open an expensive box of candy? The inside of a store that smelled just like the inside of one of those boxes. For a few seconds, we stood there, sniffing and grinning. My salivary glands started swimming. Trinja turned toward the nearest machine. Coconut almond marshmallow, was almost drooling. I gotta try one, Deb. She pressed the button, and a chocolate cone dropped down, like a coffee cup, from a kitchen machine. Then a mixture, similar to the look of soft ice cream, filled it. Want to try it with me? She asked, reaching for the cone. We both took a taste. It was absolutely the neatest sensation I've had in my whole life. Swooties aren't cold like ice cream or warm like cooked pudding, but they're like a blending of both in temperature and texture. The flavor melts instantly, and your whole mouth and brain are flooded with tastes and impressions. Like that first Swootie I tried, coconut almond marshmallow. Suddenly, as my mouth separated the individual tastes, my brain burst into memories associated with each flavor. It felt as if I were lying on a warm beach, all covered with coconut suntan oil. Then I heard myself giggling and singing as a group of roasted marshmallows around the campfire, and I relived the long ago moments of biting into the special Christmas cookies my grandmother made with almonds when I was little. Wow. Trinja looked at me, and I could see that she had just experienced the same kind of reactions. We scarfed up the rest of that swooty in a few more bites, and we moved on to another flavor. Each one, it was the same. I felt a combination of marvelous taste and joyous thoughts. We tried every flavor before we finally staggered out into the mall again. I'll have to diet for a whole year now, Trinja said, patting her stomach. I felt I feel like a blimp myself, I told her, but neither one of us cared. We both felt terrible. We both felt terrific. Go ahead in there, I called to some grade school looking kids who were looking at the store. You'll love those Swooties. It's a publicity stunt, we think, Trinja told them. Everything's free in there. In no time at all, the news about the Swooty shop had spread all over town, but days passed and still everything was absolutely free. Nobody knew who the new owners were or why they were giving away their product. Nobody cared. The mall directors said a check arrived to pay for the rent, and that was all they were concerned about. The health brigade corps said Swooties were absolutely safe for human consumption. Swooties were still being offered free a month later, but the shop owners had still not appeared. By then, nobody cared. There were always long lines of people in front of the place, but the Swooties tasted so good nobody minded waiting for them. And supply was endless. Soon, more shops like the first one began opening in other places around the city, with machines running in the same quiet, efficient way, and everything was still absolutely free. Soon, all of us were gaining weight like crazy. It's those darn Swooties, Trinja told me as we left the mall after our daily binge. Can't leave 'em alone. Each one must have 1,000 calories, but I still pig out on them. I sighed as I walked out into the sunshine. Me too. If only there were some way to eat all the Swooties we want and still not gain any weight. The words were hardly out of my mouth when I noticed a new feature in the mall parking lot. Among all the usual heliobiles, there was a tall white plastic box, sort of like those big telephone booths you see in the old pictures. A flashing sign near the booth said, "The Slimmer." A short, thin woman was standing beside it. She was deeply tanned and her head was covered with a green turban, almost the same color as her jumpsuit she was wearing. Trinja looked at the sign, then glanced at the woman. "What's that mean?" "It means that this machine can make you slimmer," the woman answered. She had a deep, strange sounding voice. "Just step inside, and you'll lose unwanted fat." She seemed so serious and confident that I was startled. In the old days, people thought they could lose weight in a hurry. But those of us who live in 2041 aren't that gullible. No pills or packs or wraps or special 24-hour diets can work. There isn't any easy way to get rid of fat. That's all there is to it. I knew this booth was a scam or a joke of some kind, but the woman acted as if it were perfectly a respectable thing. Her seriousness sort of unnerved me. I looked into the booth, half expecting someone to jump out laughing. But it was empty, stark white, and except for some overhead grill work, it was completely smooth and bare. "How can a thing like this make you slimmer?" I asked. The woman shrugged. "A new process. Do you care to try it? 25 yen to lose 1 pound of body fat." Trinja and I both burst into laughter. "And how long is it before the pound disappears?" she asked. The woman never even cracked a smile. "Instantly. Body fat is gone instantly." She gestured to a small lever on the side nearest to her. "I regulate the power flow according to your payment." My mouth dropped open. "But that's impossible. No exercise, no chemicals, no starving on a retreat week?" "No." The woman folded her arms and leaned against the smooth white sides of her cubicle, as if she didn't much care whether we tried her new process or not. Trinja and I stared at each other. I was wondering if the woman had tried the machine herself. She didn't have an ounce of fat. "You got any money?" I asked Trinja. She was shaking her head. I was rummaging through my pack. "I've got 130 yen." "5 pounds, then," the woman said, taking my money with one hand and setting the lever with the other. She literally pushed me into the booth and the door slammed behind me. At first, I wanted to scream because I was so scared. The whole thing had happened too fast. I wanted to prove that the woman and her slimmer were a big joke. But suddenly, I was trapped in a coffin like structure as bare and bright as an old microwave oven. My heart was hammering and the hair on the back of my neck stood up straight. I opened my mouth, but before I could scream, there was a loud humming sound, and instantly the door flew open again. I saw Trinja's frightened face peering in at me. "Are you all right, Deb? Are you okay?" I guess she decided not to do anything after all. You ought to get your money back. £5 are gone, the woman said in her strange voice. Trinja pulled me away. I'll just bet, she shouted back to the woman. Somebody ought to report you on that phony machine. We might even call the health brigade corps. She leaned closer to me. Are you really okay, Deb? I took a deep breath. My jeans feel loose. Frowning, Trinja shook her head. It's just your imagination, that's all. What a fake. I think that woman was a wacko, Deb. Really weird. The only thing slimmer after treatment like that is your bank account. Nobody but nobody can lose weight that easily. We'll have to go to my house so you can weigh yourself. You haven't lost an ounce. But Trinja was wrong. I really was 5 pounds lighter. I know it sounds impossible, but Trinja's calcio is never wrong. The two of us hopped and howled with joy. Then we ravaged her bedroom trying to find some money. We ran all the way back to the mall, worrying all the way that the woman and her miracle machine might have disappeared. But the slimmer was still there. Within minutes, Trinja had used up 300 yen, and she looked terrific. I can't believe it, I can't believe it, she kept saying. She notched her belt tighter. 12 pounds gone in seconds. For safety's sake, I'll have to prick your wrist, my dear, the woman said. For every 10 pounds you lose, we give you a tiny mark. Nobody will ever notice it. Didn't even hurt, Trinja said as we walked home. And neither of us could see the tiny blue pinprick, unless we looked really closely. We were both so happy about the weight loss that we almost floated. All our worries and problems about calories and fat and diets were over forever. In no time at all, the slimmers were all over the city, near all the Swooties stores. They've been a real blessing. Everybody says so. Now there's hardly a fat person left on the streets. A few people have so many blue marks on their wrists that you can see them, but most have just 4 or 5 pinpricks. Nobody really understands how these slimmers work. The attendants, all just as strange sounding as the woman in our mall, get so technical in their explanations that none of us can follow the principles they're talking about, so we don't worry much about it. The process has something to do with invisible waves that can change fat cells into energy, which then radiates away from the body. I don't care how the slimmers work, Trinja says happily. Now I can eat Swooties all day long if I want to, and I never gain an ounce. That's all I care about. Everybody feels that way, I guess. We're too happy to want to be upset about asking anything. Maybe that's why you don't hear about Swooties or Slimmers on the facts or the body vision or read about them anywhere. Nobody understands them well enough to sound very intelligent about them. But people all over Earth are beginning to use them. My cousin in Tokyo faxed to say that they have them in her area now, and people there are just as happy as we are. Except for my brother Trevor. He's not the least bit happy, he says. Of course, few 10-year-olds worry about weight, so he doesn't know the joy of being able to eat everything in sight and stay thin. Suppose the Swooties and the Slimmers are run by aliens from outer space, he says, from lots farther than we've been able to go. Maybe they have big starships posted around Earth, and they're gathering up all the energy from human fat that's sent up from the Slimmers. Maybe the Swooties are here, so people will get fat quicker, so that they'll be able to harvest. There'll be more to harvest through the Slimmer machines. Then they'll take the fat back to their planet and use it as fuel. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard of, Trinja told him. Why don't we hear about the spaceships then? Why doesn't the Health Brigade Corps tell us to stop doing this if it isn't good for us? Trevor thinks he has the answers. He says the spaceships are invisible to human detection, and he says that aliens have hypnotized our leaders into being as calm and placid as we are. The blue marks on our wrists play a big role. He says maybe after each of us has had so many blue marks, we'll be culled from the flock because our fat content won't be as good anymore. He's crazy, isn't he? He must think we all have the brains of a sheep. 10-year-old brothers can be a real pain. He simply doesn't know people yet. That's all. Humans would never sacrifice their freedom and dignity just so they could eat and still be thin. Even aliens ought to know that. I could quit eating Swooties and using those slimmers anytime I want to. But all those little blue marks Trinja and I have are beginning to look like delicate tattooed bracelets. And we both think they look really neat on our wrists.